Can food allergies or sensitivities make you fat? Now, this is a concept that's been popularized by several celebrities in the last couple years. And the idea here is that when you eat a food that your body is allergic to or sensitive to, you'll experience an increase in cortisol and insulin, which thereby promotes fat storage. So is there any truth to this? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. It's important to understand that there is only one thing that causes you to gain fat, and that's eating too many calories. So even if you eat a food that you're allergic to or intolerant to, that's not going to magically create a surplus of calories. It's not going to magically cause you to store fat. But you might ask, what about hormones? Can't this immune response mediated by your body somehow alter hormones to cause you to store fat? Insulin is known as the fat storage hormone. So if this goes up, wouldn't it cause a person to store fat? Actually, no. Insulin is largely misunderstood by a lot of people. Insulin is a hormone that helps you take carbs from the bloodstream and shuttle it into cells where it can be turned into energy. But it cannot create energy by itself. Research has actually dispelled the myth that having higher insulin levels will cause fat gain. One study compared two weight loss diets, one that was higher in carbs and one that was lower in carbs. But in both of these diets, calories and protein were matched. And what was seen was that despite insulin levels being much lower in the low-carb diet, both groups lost an equal amount of weight. And normally, insulin levels are increased by eating a high carbohydrate or even a protein-rich meal. But in the case of stress, and stress to your body when you eat an offending food, even if somehow insulin levels were to increase, this wouldn't impact fat gain or loss because that's totally dependent on calories. But what about cortisol? That's the stress hormone. That could impede fat loss, right? Or cause fat gain? Well, actually, no. Cortisol is another misunderstood hormone. Let's talk about why. Yes, cortisol is increased by stress, and its main job is to liberate fuel so that if you need to run from something, which would normally happen in a stress response, you could. So to liberate this fuel, it will take amino acids from your muscle and turn it into sugar. So it's important to understand that it's converting one type of fuel to another. It's not just creating calories out of thin air. So cortisol can't create extra calories that would in turn be stored as fat, but it can change the distribution of extra calories you're eating that is turned into fat. So for example, extra energy you're eating in the form of calories may turn more towards visceral fat rather than subcutaneous fat. So we've established that cortisol can't actually create new fat, but it can cause you to overeat. It can have an impact on how appetite hormones affect the brain, making you more hungry. But again, it's eating too many calories that would cause you to gain weight, not cortisol itself. So we've talked a little bit about cortisol and insulin, but the funny thing is that they actually inhibit each other. So when cortisol goes up, it actually suppresses the release of insulin because it wants to force your body to use the carb energy that's already there. For instance, in case you're having a fight or flight reaction and need to run. So in summary, there's no plausible mechanism by which having a food allergy or intolerance would actually cause you to gain fat. In fact, the opposite might actually happen. If the intolerance or allergy is severe enough, for example, like with celiac disease, you may actually experience a disruption in the gut lining and damage to that lining, which makes it harder for you to absorb nutrients and calories. So actually, it'd be more likely for you to lose fat than gain fat. Now, all that being said, it is possible to gain some weight when eating food that you're allergic to or intolerant to. But it's important to differentiate between weight gain and fat gain, because it would be possible for someone to gain weight in the form of fluid. If an allergy or intolerance is severe enough, and your body's mounting a major immune attack that causes a lot of inflammation, you could potentially gain some water weight, and that could show up on the scale as extra weight. But this isn't the same as fat gain. So remember, next time you're out there reading on the internet and you see that food intolerances and allergies cause fat gain, now you know the truth. So if you feel like you have a food allergy or intolerance, it's going to be really important for you to get tested. But understand that the allergy tests can only go so far. There are tests to identify an IgE-mediated allergy, but there aren't really tests for food sensitivity. So you'll have to listen to your body. And you might even consider doing a food challenge where you remove the offensive foods for several weeks or several months and then challenge your body by putting them back in one at a time. But remember this major point. while having a food allergy or intolerance can be very harmful to your health, it's not going to cause you to gain fat.